right, thank you for joining us again on another edition of Dissertation Weekly. My name is Lance Gilla, and I'll be your host. And again, in the studio, we have Dr. Alan L. Webb, and we've got some questions from our viewing audience. So I'd like to ask you those questions today, if that's okay.
Well, thank you, Lance. It's good to be back with you again. I enjoy your show, and it's very informative. And I know that dissertation students have to love this program because they're getting some good information from you and your guests that you have on the program. So delighted to be back with you again.
I'm glad you are too. All right. Good. So first question. Melly from Honolulu, Hawaii wants to know, says, Dr. Webb, the chair of my dissertation told me my research questions were not really research questions. He said they were interview questions. He said, she said she's confused and wanted to know if you could explain the difference between research questions and interview questions.
Yes, Lance, that is an excellent question, and I have a number of students from time to time that are confused about this, and when I talk with committee members and chairs of committees, many of them wonder why it is that students don't have this straight in their mind. But the best way to explain this is, and I cover this in the book, in the section on research questions. But a research question should be general, theoretical, and an interview question should be specific and personal. Let me give you an example. Research questions would be, how do faculty members experience stress in the classroom? And that would be a research question. And then your interview questions should be derived from the research question in such a way as to collect data that will enable the student to answer that research question. So, an interview question, which would collect data to answer the research question, how do faculty members experience stress in the classroom? We'll say, for example, you're interviewing a teacher, and you would ask them a question. Tell me what it's like to be a teacher in a 5th grade classroom. You give them an opportunity to answer that question. It's very important when you're interviewing someone to just keep your mouth shut. Let them tell you what they want to tell you. And they'll probably touch on some of the stressful times. If they do not touch on that, you can ask them, do you ever have times of difficulty in your class? And then you've kind of prompted them to move to the next level. But more than likely, they'll tell you things like, oh, teaching the 5th grade is great, and I love it, but there are those occasions. And then when they mention that, then you can follow up with, well, tell me about some of those occasions. Tell me about occasions. And they'll start telling you about an occasion. So, okay, so spell out to me, how did you react in that situation? So, that would be the difference between a research question. It should be general and theoretical. How do teachers experience stress in the classroom? And then the interview question, which would be derived from that in such a way to collect data that would answer that research question, would be more personal and more direct. Tell me about a typical day in your life when you teach in the classroom. So I hope that that helps Melly in Honolulu.
Very good.
Okay.
All right, next question. David from Fairfax, Virginia says that he really enjoys the program, thank you, and Dissertation Weekly, and he said he learned so much from watching our program. Good. So he's doing his qualitative dissertation. However, my committee tells me that my research questions are quantitative questions. Can you give me the difference between quantitative questions and qualitative research questions?
Okay, this is another thing that comes up from time to time. Students will mistaken research questions that are qualitative and they'll use quantitative David is wanting to know the difference between a quantitative research question and a qualitative research question. Okay, when you are doing a quantitative dissertation, you are looking for a correlation. If you're going to run a test that's a correlation, or a test that is an ANOVA, or a test that is a regression, or a test that is a t-test. If you're looking to know if there's a difference between two groups, or more than two groups, you would start the question, the research question, with something like, is there a significant difference between males and females with respect to whatever the dependent variable would be, math grades or English grades, or so that would be a typical quantitative. Is there a relationship between hours studied per week and GPA? And that's where you would run a correlation. And if you were going to do, we'll say, a regression, you would say, can the independent variables of sleep, hours of study, and GPA predict academic success? And then you would have to have some way to measure the dependent variable, which would be academic success. So in quantitative questions, you're really asking, is there a difference between something? Is there a relationship between two things? Or is it possible to explain or predict an outcome by independent variables? Now, in qualitative, you are looking to explain or to enlighten or to investigate or to explore. So, the three typical questions would start with how. How do teachers experience stress in the classroom? Or why? Why do certain students have difficulty learning a certain subject? Or what types? What types of individuals are successful? So, in a particular activity or process. So that is the difference. The quantitatives are looking more at the what, and the qualitatives are looking more at how, why, or what types. So I would say to David in Virginia, if he is doing a qualitative dissertation, probably the best thing he could do would be to start each of his research questions with how, why, or what types.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay. I think we're moving on along here. That's very good. Okay, so third question.
Mm-hmm.
Milton from East Lansing, Michigan, excuse me, writes, Dr. Webb, I'm just starting my dissertation. Bought your book, so you want to do a qualitative dissertation on Amazon.com. Very good.
Okay.
It says, I read the first two chapters and have learned so much about the dissertation process. Said that he submitted his prospectus to his committee already. Oh, very good. And they told me that my research questions were a mess. It happens. Can you help me figure out why they said this? In addition, I love the host's bow tie. Thank you.
Well, Milton, I love the host's bow tie too. As you can see, I decided I would take a page out of your book and get me a bow tie to wear today. Milton, thank you for buying my book on Amazon.com. I appreciate it. And as you work your way through the book, you'll get to the section on research questions, where you'll learn a lot more of the specifics about how to formulate research questions. But your committee members told you that your research questions were a mess, okay? That doesn't give me a lot to go on, but I think I can probably help. There are three types of questions not to ask, okay? And if you avoid asking these three types of questions, then you'll be well on your way to having research questions that are not a mess. The first type of question you do not ask is a yes or no. That would be more of a quantitative question.
Exactly.
The second type of question you would not ask would be a double-barreled question. Many times we see research questions that will be, what is the importance and the significance of this particular program with respect to academic achievement for students? Well, all right, we've got two questions there.
Yeah.
Significance and importance. Those are two different words. Now, somebody may think that significance and importance are synonyms. Well, if it is, then just use one of them. There's no need to use two of them because that confuses the matter. Okay. And then the third type of research question that needs to be avoided is what we would call a leading question or a biased question. Now I'm going to exaggerate just for the sake of instruction, but it would be something like, well, since we all know that this type of institution is not very good, then what should we do about it? In other words, we've already come to a conclusion and we're biasing the research. And the same goes for interview questions. You want to avoid asking people yes/no questions because then you have no data.
Exactly.
And you want to avoid asking people double-barrel questions because then they don't know which question to answer. And then when you start to transcribe your interview and you get your transcript, you don't know what question they're answering. So you want to avoid interview questions that are double-barreled and also biased questions because you are obviously going to get what you're looking for, and that's really not research. It's worthless. I shouldn't be quite so strong, but when you know what you are going to find before you start the research, then I don't consider that very valuable research. Also, I would say that when you interview people, give them semi-structured research questions, which it's somewhat defined. You giving them a direction to go in, then you let them go into it. Yes/no questions, just you might as well be doing a survey. Double-barrel questions is confusing. But if you ask someone, tell me about what it's like to be Lance Gilliland at work,
Wow, what a day.
then you give them the opportunity to tell you all that they want to tell you. Whereas
Exactly.
if you're so narrow and focused in your interview question, they're going to answer that, but you're going to miss a wide array of data that they might possibly give you and want to give you. And more of this, we can explore more of this sometime when we talk about data analysis and how you analyze the data, but I'll save that for another time. But thank you very much, Lance, for having me on the program today, and these were extremely good questions, and I enjoyed answering them.
Very good. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you so much.
Okay.